Hello, people. I was hoping that more persons would come in. What's happening to everyone today? Any idea? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, sir.
Oh, hold on. Yeah. Yes, guys. Any idea what happened to the rest of the class?
No, sir.
No? Well, nonetheless, we're going to keep it moving. You guys are here, so we will keep it moving. All right. So we had our final presentation on on Saturday, just gone. So after that, so in the coming Saturdays, we're going to be doing a series of class activities that's going to be directly related to your design studio. All right. Now I'm just checking on the schedule. Give me 1 minute. All right. Okay. All right, guys. Um, oh, wait a minute. Did I not share the screen? Okay. So let's take a look at where we're at now. All right. So we recently made it through checkpoint 3. That's the biggest checkpoint. That one was due October 26th. Now it's October 28th. And we're going to move on to um checkpoint 4. Um checkpoint 4 has to do with producing the rendered images. So if we take a look on the handout here, this is where we should be at now, which is going to be checkpoint 4. And for checkpoint 4, we're going to generate these 4 types of images. So we're going to start to move into photorealism. And that's going to be done using Twinmotion. All right, guys. All right. So, Darian, how you stay with your model? You there, Darian? Okay, so now that we have our Darian? No? What about Rochelle? Is Rochelle here? Model. Rochelle?
Sir, some of us still looking about breakfast, so
Oh, wow. I know what you meant. Before I came on, I just looked um after my breakfast. All right. So tell you what, let's just move right into the lesson for today. As per usual, you can follow along. We're going to be inside of Revit, right? And we're going to explore some of the features in order to give us these views. Completed. Now we're going to look. Okay, so now that we have our model completed, now we're going to look at how we can manipulate the views of the model to get some specific types of views. So we're going to look on generating a exploded view as well as some other visual styles. Now, right now, I am in a perspective view, and I'm going to switch now to the default 3D view, which I can click here, or I can click this icon up the top. This is what my default 3D view looks like. Now, most of your view settings in Revit, or what you see in your viewport, is located down here. And this is where you can change whether you want it to be wireframe, hidden line, shaded. So for example, this is shaded, this is hidden line, as well as control shadows and a host of other options in the graphic display options. Now, before we get started with this, the first thing to do is to start to at least set up our views by creating some additional views. So one of the first things we need to do is we're going to create a hidden line view. So we're going to right click views. We're actually going to just duplicate our existing 3D view. So that's this view here. And I'm going to just duplicate that view. Now that I've duplicated it, I want to rename it, and I will call this hidden line. All right. And what I will do is I'll put a little underscore before it, right? Just so that it can order it in the right order for me. So this will be my hidden line view. Now I want to duplicate this again, and this time I'm going to rename it, and I will call this one exploded view. And one more time, and I'll call it perspective section. Now these views with the underscores are the views that we want. Just to simplify things, I'm going to delete this existing view that I have here. And this view actually came with Revit. I'm going to create another view. I'm going to duplicate this again, and I'll just call this perspective. So I have a perspective section and a perspective view. Now these views are all the same because I've really just duplicated the same view just to get started with, right? Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is firstly, how do I manipulate these views, right? So if I go down the bottom here to visual styles, I can go to graphic display options, and here's a few interesting options here. So we know we're on display style, that's here. Under shadows, we want to enable shadows and choose apply, and you see what that does is actually creates those shadows. And then we want to enable ambient shadows, and if we choose apply, what that does is add some soft shadows. So let me turn off shadows, and you can see what that looks like. It starts to add these soft shadows to the views here, which is pretty cool. Now, additionally, there are some other options here, such as sketchy lines. And if I enable this and turn on, for example, extensions, then you'll notice that my lines get these little extensions there. And if I enable jitter, the lines get kind of wobbly, so it looks kind of like a sketch. Let me turn that one off. Now, one option that we kind of overlook was this silhouette option. And what this one actually does, I will just choose hidden for this example. So these are actually different line types. So for example, hidden line is like a type of dash line. Thin lines are lines that are very thin in dimension, and wide lines are like very thick lines. So for example, if I choose this kind of dash line here and choose apply, then what you notice now is that all the lines that form the outer edges, so notice the inner edges lines don't change. But if I change my view, now these become outer edges, and then they become that hidden line type that I've selected there. So one really cool feature of this is that I could choose wide lines, choose apply, and then if you have your line weights turned on, notice that your outer lines becomes much more wider compared to your inner lines, which gives an overall, I would say, interesting effect. All right, now there are some other options here. So for example, we can set our sun angle. Right now, if I choose apply, this is our sun angle, and under lighting down here, we can actually change our sun angle, right? So that is more that way, that is more from the front. So maybe this is fine here. Maybe it could come around just a little bit. Yeah. And then we can adjust the altitude if we want. So we could make it a more shallow angle, 20. There we go. And we choose okay. So this is where we do that. Now the depth Q setting here is going to be grayed out because this only works when changing our elevation, when in elevation or section views. And what that does, it auto adjusts the thickness of the lines depending on how far back those lines are. So for example, a door that is closer to the camera will have thicker lines than a door that is more to the background. All right, but that only works for elevation and sections views. Now some other options that's here, realistic has to do when you change to the realistic mode, and background is where we can choose like a gradient. So if we choose okay here, of course we're looking down, so now you see that gradient view that's showing there. All right, so these are pretty much our graphic settings. Now if we got this look and we like this particular look, we can choose okay. The thing is that when we switch to these other views, so right now I'm in the perspective view, but if I said okay, I want to edit the hidden line view, notice that everything has gone back to the default. If I go back to the perspective view, notice that everything is gone back here. As a matter of fact, because this is perspective view, we should actually, if we go to our view cube settings here, we can change this to perspective, and then we'll have a perspective view here. Now another thing that we want to do also is we want to hide these level lines, and to do that, a quick way is we could right click and choose hide in current view all, and we're going to choose category, because if we choose element, then it will only hide this single line here. But if we choose hide the category of levels, then it will hide all levels, which is great. Now you can ignore these lines here. They're only showing there because they're very close to the surface here, so it's more of a graphical glitch. But if you should print a PDF, then these lines will not show. Okay, so now we have all of these settings here, but what if we want to copy all of those settings over to this next view here? Then what we need to do, go back to perspective, is we now need to look into our view templates. Now view templates are located under view, And here they are. They're called view templates. So what view templates do is they take a snapshot of all the view settings that we have changed. So everything that we've hidden, every graphical style element that we have selected, anything that is visual, the view template will take a snapshot of that setting and save them under a profile. So right now we have just changed a bunch of view settings, and what we want to do here is create template from this current view. Now we want to name this perspective. We're going to call it underscore perspective. We're going to choose OK. Now if you notice here, you see a list of other view templates that have been saved in this file, and then you see this new one that we created. So what this is saying is that this new view template, it's going to take a snapshot, remember, of all the view settings. So all of these settings here, it is saying, hey, do you want me to take a snapshot of the detail level, parts visibility, and all of these, you know, shadow settings, background settings, all of these things, we can take a snapshot of them, right? And we can say, okay, now we can decide to change. So right now, this view that we're looking on now is still different from, if I go to the hidden line view here, you will notice that this is different, but now I can click on view template and I can choose perspective template. And now everything is looking pretty much the same. We have the background, we have the shadows, and we have everything that is copied over. Now the interesting thing to note is that you can't change any of these now settings. So for example, if I decided that, oh, okay, let me change the thickness of these silhouette lines, and I go to visual styles, notice that it is grayed out. And the reason for that is that all of the view settings are being read from this view template that's here, and that view template is what we call perspective template. Now if we wanted to, we can disable it and say none. It will still keep all our settings and now allow us to edit all of these things. So we can go through now. So for example, exploded view, that doesn't look like it, so we're going to apply the view template. It's okay. Notice how the level lines have been hidden, because in that view template we defined a rule that says hide all level lines, and we don't have to manually go into each view and having to update those graphical styles. So let's go to our perspective section and let's do the same. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start to work on these individual views. So our perspective view is pretty straightforward. We could actually so what we want to do is to change the frame of view slightly, and to do that we're going to enable our view wheel here, and we're going to click this little drop down menu here and say increase decrease focal length. So we're going to pull this away and then push forward into our scene. All right, press escape. We're going to pan down a little bit more, the orbit a little bit more to the right. All right, and that will be our perspective view. Now let's talk about the perspective section. Now for our perspective section, we're going to want to cut a section view of the model. So to do that, we're going to enable the section box. So click that, this box will come up, and we're just going to adjust that. And we're just going to adjust the back up and the front. All right, and yes, maybe a shot like this. Now it is a perspective section, so this needs to be in the perspective view. Now for this particular view, we don't want the horizon line here. So in this case, I'm actually going to disable the view template so that I can now go in and say for my background, I want none. Great, so now it's just a gray background. And let's go ahead and we're going to hide the section box. So this is what this perspective section looks like, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now let's talk about our exploded view. I'm going to save this file. Now for our exploded view, what we're going to do is first we're going to use a section box because we don't need to see everything that's here. So to do that, we're going to enable the section box. Now we still need to give it some space so that we can give our building some space to explode. However, in this case, we do want to hide these trees because they might get into the way of when we're trying to demonstrate the explosion. So to do this, we're going to select one of the trees, right click, and go to hide in view, and we're going to hide. If we hide the element, only a single tree will be hid here. So we would have to do that for every single tree. But instead, in this particular case, where we are unable to hide for category, we would use the visibility graphics option. Now to find our visibility graphics, we're going to go under the view tab and we're going to go to visibility graphics. And what you'll get is this dialog box here. Now, currently everything is grayed out. So let me cancel that. The reason for that is, remember, we're using a view template, which overrides everything visual. So we're actually going to choose none. And now if we go to hide in view, we will see that we can unhide the category, this is what was actually causing the category not to show up here. So we're just going to choose this method and say hide category, and that will hide all our trees there. Now we're also going to hide the section box. All right, so now we're left with just the building. Now, in order to use this explode feature, how it works is that it allows us to manipulate objects only in this view. So for example, let's deal with the roof. If we select the roof element, this is the roof covering, and under modify, there's this button here that's called displace elements, which is made particularly for creating explosions. Now, once we click that, we get this gizmo here, and this gizmo allows us to just move an object. Now, the great thing about this is that if I go into a next view, like hidden line, notice that the element is still there, but in exploded view, it is. And that is the beauty of this element here. Now, in this particular view, the shadows might get in the way. So we're going to also go into visibility graphic options here, and we're going to turn off cast shadows. So that way it doesn't look so confusing. Now, the other great thing is for this explosion tool is that we can click path, and notice when we hover over the edges, we can click once and it will automatically create a trace line to show us where this element is coming from, which is pretty cool. So let's press escape. We're going to select the beam system that was used to create the mounting lath that sits under the roof covering, and we're going to choose that same option. We're going to move that up, and we're going to do the same thing for the beam system here. All right, now we're going to do the same thing for the walls. This time we're going to come outward. Now we can get as crazy as we want in terms of how we want to explode this, but for our purposes, we'll only do a few examples here. Let's also add the line to this. All right, so those are our exploded view here that's saved under this view. So far we have perspective, we have perspective section, and we have an exploded view. Okay, so now that we have done these other views, the last view we need to do now is for a photorealistic view. Now,
Sir, we're not hearing anything.
Sorry, I'm here talking and my mic was muted. Right, I was asking if you guys were following okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, great. All right, so let's keep it moving. Now, Revit does have the option to do photorealistic views. For example, if we head over to the perspective view here and we duplicate this view, and we'll just call this one, rename this, call it perspective photo realistic, and we can actually change our graphic mode here to realistic, and you see the computer take a little while to do some calculations. Down at the bottom left, you will see where it's actually rendering out that view within Revit itself. And we see this is what the photorealistic view looks like. It does have some shadows and it does start to introduce texture nonetheless. Now, we also had a hidden line view here. And for a hidden line view, it's pretty straightforward. It's just going to be this hidden line view that's right here. That was the first view that we actually set. So now we have all these views set up. We want to use a different program to do our photorealistic view in this case. And for that, we're going to turn to Twinmotion. Now, if you're using your version of SketchUp that has a Twinmotion link, meaning you will actually see if you go to the view tab here, you will actually see a Twinmotion link here. So Twinmotion is an external application and it has a plugin that allows us to link directly to Revit. However, for our tutorial, I'm not going to be using the plugin link. I'm going to be doing all of this manual, so that way, whether you have the link or not, you'll still be able to follow along. And when I say manual, I mean we're going to export our Revit file as a FBX file, and then we're going to import that FBX file into Twinmotion. We'll still be able to keep the link through the FBX file. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to File, and before we export, let us see if we can configure a view just for exporting to Twinmotion. So I'm going to duplicate another view and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it TM for Twinmotion export. So this is the view I will use to export into Twinmotion. So there's a couple of things I don't want to export. Definitely these levels. So I'm going to right click and say hide category. I'm also going to hide all of these foliage. So I'm going to hide category. This is pretty much all I need for Twinmotion, because Twinmotion has its own trees that I can utilize. All right, great. So now that's done. With this view selected, I'm going to go to File, Export, and choose FBX. All right. So I'm going to save this to my desktop, and I'm going to call this Tower T. I'm going to just work inside a folder called Demonstration to make life easier. So I call Lookout Tower TM, and it's going to be saved as an FBX file. I'm going to choose Save. And now what it's doing is exporting the FBX file. All right. Now, Twinmotion is a standalone program. So right now I'm on the Twinmotion website, and Twinmotion is completely free. So I can download this. And in order to download Twinmotion, I'm going to have to sign into Epic Games. I'm going to have to download the Epic Launcher, which is a program that when launched, it looks like this. Then I'm going to head over to Unreal Engine, and then I will see Twinmotion up here. And this is where I can choose Launch. Now this is what the splash screen looks like in Twinmotion. So I'm just close that splash screen, and this is what it looks like when it is started up. By default, we get this ground plane, some mountains in the background, and then this object that's right here in front of us. Now for all our purposes, we can delete most of these. But before we go into doing any manipulations, let's just take a quick look at the interface. Now we see we have a menu here at the left, we have a menu at the right, and we have some buttons below. Now each of these menus that are activated, you can see that they are activated based on the icons that are listed below. So for example, this is highlighted in blue because the library is activated. If I turn this off, notice it's not in blue anymore and the library is gone. So library on, library off. Same thing for stats. Stats on, stats off. On the right hand side, we see where we have scene that's activated along with properties. So if I turn off scene, that is scene off, scene on, and properties, if I turn that off, then it's off right there. Turn it on or off. Now in the middle, we have some options as well. So we can turn on the import option. See it's on, it comes up, off. Same thing for materials, on or off. Now notice that I can switch between them here, or I can just turn it off. However, these menus here, when I turn on, for example, library, I can also turn on stats. And then what it will do, it will stack them together. So let me turn those off. Let's try it on the right side where we actually have 4 different set of options. So I can turn on scene. If I turn on properties, notice that properties comes stacked with scene. I can also turn on the XYZ, the transform panel. Notice that that comes stacked as well. And I can turn on view sets. So now we have 4 different menus all stacked on top of one another. And you can see they're all activated here. And I can turn them all off. So that is essentially how the interface menu system works. Now, the most important things we're going to use is going to be our scene. And let's go with this one first. This shows us all the objects that are in the scene. Right now we have a starting ground. If I click it, notice it's highlighted. A starting landscape. Those are the mountains in the background. And we have pedestal, cylinder, and the sphere. So once I click on an object, notice that it becomes highlighted in the scene. That's right here. So from here, I can delete the sphere and I can go ahead and delete these objects here. Now, additionally, I can undo by holding Control and press Z, and now it's back. Now, additionally, in our scene, notice we have these folders. So if I minimize this folder, there is a folder called starting base. If I turn it off, then you can see that all of these objects were located in that folder. Now for our purposes, we're going to delete all of these objects because we don't need them. We're going to delete the ground. So now we're left with just some mist in the background and basically nothing. Now there's one more menu that we haven't seen, and that is our ambience menu. Now our ambience menu, it's a kind of an interesting one because it's actually not one of these buttons down here. Instead, this button is located at the top of our scene, and our ambience menu controls our lighting. Now we're going to get to that in just a bit. Before we do that, let's import our model. So we're going to go to the import menu here. I'm going to choose the little plus. Now there's a bunch of different things we can import. In our case, we want to import geometry. Choose open. Here is that FBX file we exported called Lookout Tower. I'm going to choose open. And if I expand the options, we have a couple options here. The most important one, keep hierarchy, simply means that if it is an object in Revit, it will keep it as an object in Twinmotion. Whereas collapse, it will keep it as a single entity, a single object. So all our windows, doors, floor, boards, everything will be all attached as a single object. And collapse by material does what it says. They're just going to be grouped together by materials. So we're going to choose keep hierarchy and choose import. All right, we take a look. This is the model that we have here. Okay, so we have our model imported, and notice that our model doesn't have any materials, but of course we will be adding materials. So now that we've looked on how to import our model the manual way, now let's check out how to import it using the plugin way. Now, what you want to do is you want to find the Datasmith plugins, and in order to do that, the quickest way is to just type the word Datasmith into Google, and you will see here Datasmith exporter plugins. And if we scroll down, we're going to be looking for Revit exporter. And we see that we have for Unreal 5.2. Now the Datasmith plugin, notice it says for Revit 2024, the functionality is included in Revit. Now if you're using Revit 2023, then you're going to need to download this plugin. Now even though the plugin says for Unreal Engine, this Datasmith plugin also works for Twinmotion as well. Now fortunately for me, I'm using Revit 2024, so you can see I have the feature already built in. So what I'm going to do is back over in Twinmotion, I'm going to actually say create a new scene. There we go. And over here in Revit, I'm going to go to Twinmotion and I'm going to say open in Twinmotion. I can also choose this option to auto sync, which would mean any change I make here, it will also make in Twinmotion. So I can click that option as well. All right. Now I'm going to choose open in Twinmotion. Now, in my case, it is saying that a supported version of Twinmotion isn't installed. And this is the kind of tricky reasons surrounding the plugin. It's because the Twinmotion that I'm using is newer than the Revit version. So this Revit version doesn't recognize this Twinmotion. However, instead of using this open in Twinmotion, we're just going to use the export to Datasmith. So I'm going to choose that option. And this is essentially, instead of saving an FBX file, it's saving a Datasmith file, which is a special type of file export. So I'm going to create this folder and call it Datasmith. And I'm going to save the Datasmith file there. And I'm going to save this as save. All right. Now we can try this again. First, let me delete my starting ground here. All right. So let's go over to import. Open, and this time instead of opening this FBX file, I'm going to go into here and I'm going to open the Datasmith file. I'm going to leave the same keep hierarchy option and choose import. Now this time around, you can see that the Datasmith file actually tried to carry some materials along with it. Now obviously these materials aren't applied correctly, but you can choose if you want to start off with this type of file or not. Personally, I don't mind using the FBX file because at least then I know what materials are not displayed correctly. So it's totally up to you which method you want to use. Now for our purposes here, I'm going to use the FBX file because that way you can know which materials are applied and which materials are not, because everything is just one monochromatic color. Okay, so let's start applying some materials now. Now, does anybody here have Twinmotion currently installed?
Yes, sir. My hand has been up. I need to ask a question.
Guys? Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Answer? Did somebody answer?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Lovely, lovely. Well, not everybody. Some persons still need to install it. So as you saw a while ago, right? When you install the latest version of Twinmotion, your Revit will not recognize it. Chances are maybe Revit 2025 will recognize it. So when you choose the opening Twinmotion option, it will just work. So right now, the best way to link your models is going to be to either to save out a Datasmith file or just save an FBX file. It's up to you. Okay. Right away, you can see that I have my library panel open. That's here. And I have my scene and properties panel open. That's here as well. I like to turn these panels off when I'm not using them. So let's start working on our material. So the library panel is on. if I go to my home folder here, you will see these are the different items in our libraries. The first one is materials. Let's start applying our glass material. Let's apply clear glass. Notice when I apply it to one object, all the other glass materials gets the same material. And that's because we have this option selected here. If I undo that and I now selected apply to only an object, then it would only apply to one object, which we might need sometimes. But in this case, we want it to apply to all objects. Next, we want to apply our wood sided panels here. So let's go back to materials. Let's go to wood, and then we can choose wood siding. Now notice once we apply it here, it applies to all of these. If you zoom in, notice that it's just really small. So what we're going to do is we need to look at the properties of this material. Now, in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use this pipette icon here and just pipette this material. Notice it shows us the properties of these materials, right? And it's doing that using the properties panel. You can see it highlighted here. So if we scroll down, we'll see we have scale, and we can increase that scale. Maybe it could be larger. Now notice it reaches maximum, but you can still type a higher value, so 11. All right, let's add some wood here. So I'm going to choose this wood material here and apply here. You can kind of see this wood material here. Let's make it a little bit larger. There we go. You can see it a little better. Now the reason why it's colored so weird is because we have this huge red color. So let's get rid of that. So let's go to material, and we're going to go to materials, and this time we're going to go to we're going to look for ground material, nature. And here we go. Let's use this as 3, maybe not exactly lawn grass. Maybe it could even be this material here. Let's save this file. Perhaps what we can do here is we can maybe apply a different material. So maybe give it some rocks or sand closer to the water, and then maybe some grass closer to the back. So if we head back over to Revit, choose our landscape tool, maybe go to our top view, head over to head over to massing and site with our site selected, and then we head to subdivide, and we want to set the height of that new subdivided area. Let's set it to like 1 millimeter because we want it to pretty much be on the surface. Then let's see if we can use the spline tool for this. And what we're creating here is kind of like an edge that's going to have our like rocks and stuff, and we're going to come all the way back around. So this is now underwater, so this part here doesn't matter. Close it off, and we're going to choose OK. All right, so if we look in 3D view, this is what we have of this surface, which is different from this surface. So this is sitting on top. So now let's choose OK. So now everything is regrouped. We're going to go to File, Export as a FBX, and we're going to replace the previous FBX that's there. Head back over to Twinmotion, and then we're going to, on the import, we're going to just choose Reload. All right, great. So now we have a different element that's here. So let's choose maybe some rocks for this. We're going to make the size be much larger, so you can kind of see the rocks coming in there. Now I noticed that you might notice that the landscape is a bit rugged, very sharp, but that doesn't matter because we're going to cover it with vegetation. Now we're going to cover this with some green. Maybe we can choose this kind of mossy color. Let's pipette that material. It's the size, maybe 15. All right. Now also we can start to change the water material. That's definitely not this color. So we're going to head over to materials, head over to liquid, choose lake. There we go. Starting to look much nicer. Let's also choose this Tibba color here. Now if we bring up our materials options at the bottom here, we can see all the materials that we have been using, so we can actually reuse this one in these locations here. By the way, to move around, I'm using ASWD, and I'm using Q and E to go up and down. These are all your controls right here. We can also change the siding here. So if I selected this wood siding here, which is this brown color. I could make that white, and we can make the timber color, which is this color right here. We can make it perhaps less shiny. So what we want to do here is we want to increase the roughness, which makes a surface less shiny. Then we also want to change the tint, maybe something a bit darker, more gray. So I want to take out the red so I can expand details and reduce the saturation. Let's also take this into white. It's a little brown and more. So now it's more gray, which is closer to what I want. As for these railing, let's go into the metal category. And I noticed that right now, this and this material is now matching. So we're going to leave that. But we're going to look for maybe this carbon, apply it to the rest of the railing and the wires. Now, in this case, it might be hard to drag this material to this very thin material here. Let me try that again. So by zooming in, there we go. Let's also try on this carbon on this window frame. All right, let's change this roof material here. So let's look on the roof covering. Let's make it this gray, and let's make the size much bigger. Guess I'm losing some of these wires here because it's really thin. All right, let's change the floor material. So we're going to go to timber again. This time we're going to pick one of these and then modify them. Let's try the maple, the size. We're also going to change these doors to that same carbon, this vent right here. Now in this case, we'll probably want to change just this step by itself. So I want to change this to apply to object and apply this just to the step. Same thing for this step here. So you see the fact that the materials, I left it in this red material. So that way it's easy to spot what materials I did change in color as yet. All right. So now we finish applying materials to the building and some materials to the environment. Okay. Now what we want to start to do is to start adding some environment elements. So we're going to head over to library and let's see what they have. So we go to objects, and if we look under vegetation, rocks, we have some rock elements here, which would probably be very useful. So what I can start doing is to start manually placing some of these objects here. I'm going to just duplicate this by holding shift and drag, and I can just drag this in the center here and it will float on the tops of here. So what I'm doing here is I'm just creating a nice kind of natural edge, and this is going to be depending on your own art direction you want to do the edges here. For me, I want it to have a little bit of a rock edge. There you go. Now additionally, this was manually placing some elements. I can also have some painted elements here, and in order to do that, we're going to head over to the populate tab. I'm going to head to place. I'm going to head to paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over some of these rocks. And now with that said, I can actually start to paint them on. It's a bit too heavy, so I'm going to undo that. Right. This time I'm going to reduce the diameter. There we go. And I'm just going to paint along the edge so that this isn't so harsh. So I'm just kind of masking that area there. All right. Now the great thing about this is I can always go back to edit this paint here. If I click on it, I can go in and manipulate back these objects later. Let's look on the vegetation, and let's look on the grass, not grass. Let's look on the bushes, look for some ferns, and this time we're going to paint a couple of these guys here. Now if I paint it too much here, I can go to the erase tool and erase a few. So that's what it's looking like so far. Probably paint some on these areas here a little larger, and I'll just get some in the back part here. All right, now essentially all we're going to do is layer different plants together. So we're going to hit escape, we're going to hit back the populate tool, and we can just select a different shrub. In this case, let's look under trees. So we're kind of just getting larger and larger. Okay, so we're going to paint a few of these. So we're going to drag this guy over there. We're looking for more medium size. Oh, we need to actually download them. So we need to download. So these are going to be more medium-sized trees. Okay, let's see how this one works out. And we probably need to adjust the spacing. So I'm going to select each one of these and change the density, increase it a little more. Go back to paint. Additionally, we can go in and manually place some additional trees. So we can just drag them straight into the scene, and we can always copy them as well. So maybe those tall ones can go more to the back. So this method is a bit more manual of placing the trees, or you can decide to just paint them in as well. So if we go populate, paint, we can just grab a few of these trees. So increase the age of these ones here, density. All right, so that's pretty much it. Now, additional things we can add would be things like objects and props. So for example, you can add a sailboat, maybe off into the distance, maybe a small inflatable boat. All right, then we can add some characters as well. In this case, it's going to be posed, maybe summer persons. So we can start adding things like, so if we put a person there on the deck, we can also look under objects, and maybe we can start to add some of these elements here, like maybe this kind of an umbrella covering here, maybe add some seating maybe to some of these outdoor areas. All right, now before we start adding more objects, at a certain point it's a good idea to set up our views. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the media area when you hit this plus to start adding our first shot, and we can start to set up our time of day. Now we can also choose an HDR backdrop. That will help us a lot with lighting. So we're going to choose enable, then we're going to choose HDR backdrop. Now once we do that, you will notice that you get this massive dome in our scene, and we can actually move this dome around. So what we're going to do is we can change on the details, we can change the size of that dome. We can change the height offset. So we're going to push that back down below the water. And we can also change the rotation. So we want to try to select an appropriate view. Now, right now, our sun is aligned to the backdrop. So what we can do is say uncheck match sun to HDR, and that way when we rotate the HDR, it doesn't affect our sun. So it will still affect our lighting a little bit, not so much. All right, now some other things we want to do is we want to head over to camera, turn off auto exposure. We also want to head to our lens, and maybe we can try something like a 20mm lens. This is going to be up to you and your particular view. And we're going to enable parallelism, which will keep all our verticals straight. Then on the render, we're going to enable path tracer, and let's change the angle of the sun. We do need to adjust our sun settings. So our sun intensity is set to 0. So we're going to set that back maybe like to 4. There we go. So let's change back our angle, maybe something like that. Now once our view is all set up, we can then start to add in some additional objects that's going to be more linked to our particular view. So for example, we could start to add in some specific trees in very specific areas now that we know the particular view that we want to use. So for example, we could put this tree just about here because we know it would, trying to block that horizon line. There we go. Let's enable back the path tracer. So you see though, because we have set the view, we want to save this view by clicking this little refresh icon here. So now so that our view can be saved. All right. Now, additionally, let's see if we can pull our sailboat in the background of our picture. Maybe just on the edge of the picture there. All right. Now we can talk about saving this view. So firstly, if we head over to image, we can change the size. In this case, I'm going to choose 4K. Then I'm going to choose export. And on the image, I'm going to hit the plus and I'm going to choose that image that we configured. And I'm going to choose start export. And I will export it to that same desktop folder. All right. And if we go to our desktop folder now, we will see the image that we just rendered, which looks like this. Now, additionally, we can go in and add some more people and maybe add some foliage maybe underneath here like this. But these are the primary steps to getting our views rendered. Perhaps we can change the material. In my case, I don't think I'm liking the wood siding that much. Maybe I would go with something that's a little bit more clean and modern. So maybe it's just replace all materials. And that's the beauty about this. You can simply just change the material and render again. Now, if I choose render again, it won't replace the previous image. It will simply add 0, 0, 1 to the end of that image. And that's our new image there. So I think I would prefer this look much better. And I can now go in and start to maybe add some more details, add some furniture and some other details to really build this scene out. Add some more thick foliage, maybe some trees closer to the coast, and just really start to build out this scene. So that is how we do a photorealistic render using Twinmotion alongside Revit. Okay, so all right, guys, so seems simple enough, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So I noticed, let me go ahead again and do another check. And what I'm checking for is to see who submitted for the checkpoint 3, right? Remember, that's going to be the pretty much the largest checkpoint. I would say the bulk of the work, right, guys? And I see a few people that has submitted, which is good, but it's still missing about 50% of you. So I want you guys to use the time to finish up. Now, this checkpoint 4 is due there we go here. So checkpoint 4, we have a little time to do that. So it's not due next week, but the week after. And but here is the thing about the checkpoint 4. Checkpoint during the time when we're doing checkpoint 4, we're also going to be doing the studio-based project, because the studio-based project is also a rendering in Twinmotion. So who can I ask now? Providencia, how far are you guys in your housing project?
Sir, we're still doing the designs, the floor plans. We haven't started up the layouts. The
Okay.
unit.
Okay. No problem. So you're still working on the units. So
No, sir, we are not there. Like, it's too far. Like, we are not that far as yet.
so you haven't started to flesh out what each of your units would look like?
No, sir.
Oh. But it's getting mighty close to the end of the semester. When is your final crit?
November 29th.
29th. Okay. So you have about a month.
Yes,
So-
sir.
So do you think that you guys would have fleshed out your floor plans by next week?
I think
Is
so.
that
I don't know, sir. Like,
is that on your like what is on your studio schedule?
can somebody answer that, please?
Somebody?
So I don't really have it specific because we are separated in different groups with different lectures. But we should have
Right.
our floor plans, all our floor plans fleshed out by next week. Because right now we should already have our ground floor plan fleshed out and we should be adjusting the upper floor ones because we already started it. So we should have it by next week.
Okay.
Sir, in all honesty, we are all behind because of our lecturers are very laid back. So
Yeah.
nobody is really under any pressure to really move faster than the pace that we're currently at. So yes, we are really behind.
Oh, you feel that pressure behind you. I mean,
Sir?
you're feeling the pressure of falling behind on you. That's
Sir,
what
we
you're
can't just use live work project then.
Say again?
We can't use live work project.
No, I know it is supposed to be this semester's project that you use, because when you render out this view of your floor plan, it should form your a part of your portfolio presentation. So
Sir,
no, all hope is not lost. It's just that as it relates to computing, we are pretty much on track, right? And remember, our aim from the beginning of the semester was for me to finish with you guys for your crit in before it gets close to your final crit, which is in November, and we are on target to finish with you somewhere between November 17th, November 20th, maybe in that time period, because that's when we have checkpoint 5. Checkpoint 5 is really simple. It's really a one class thing. So as for the studio-based project, it relies on having your floor plans from your design studio though. So those two fates are tied together.
Sir,
Now, if you don't,
Hello?
Go ahead.
We have interim on the 8th of November, and we're supposed to have floor plans, sections, elevation, and site plan. So maybe, I don't know.
Oh. Hold on. You mean not Monday, you mean Tuesday, because you have studio on Tuesday.
Interim is on the 8th of November. That's Friday. That's next Friday.
Oh, that's Friday. That's Friday. Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. Okay. So what I would hope is that you would have some floor plans that you can use for your studio-based project. Now, even if you don't have the floor plans by next week, I mean, I'm still going to demonstrate it in class, and we are still going to, and then you guys will go out on your own and do it. So ultimately, it is not like the assignment can be issued if you don't have the floor plans for next week. But you want to have them, because if you have your floor plans and you can actually follow in class, then pretty much by the end of the class, you already have that assignment almost out the window, rather than having to deal with it as as an actual assignment. So that is the plan for next week. So next week we're still going to be in Twinmotion and Revit, but this time we're going to be rendering an interior view, and this interior view, I'm hoping for you guys, will be your your kitchen area. So we'll talk a little bit about interior views. Maybe we do that on Saturday, right? And then on Monday we will do a little time to do the practical. All right. So that will be our plan going forward, guys. All right. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start to mark your assignment, your checkpoint 3. And I want you guys to start to work on your checkpoint 4, which is what we just went through today. All right, guys. So that is pretty much going to do it for our class today.
Okay, sir. Could you upload this recording to the
Oh, most definitely.
site?
As soon as we're done, I will have it there so that you guys can move right into it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys.
Yes, sir, you too.
You too, sir.
Sorry, can I talk to you when everyone is on?
Okay, sure. Providence. Yeah.
Hi, sir. Can we talk to you for a quick moment, please?
Sure. Providence, you want to talk, or do you want to go into a private room?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, problem. And Terry and I'll come back to you. All right.
Okay, sir.
Sir, are you recording this?
No, no. Hold on.